All right, so welcome everybody to our webinar tonight. Here we are to kickstart your career. It's great to have a few of you here on the call tonight. We've tried something different tonight to do an evening call because we understand that sometimes it's quite tricky to do things during the day, and especially when we want to focus on our own careers. That can be quite challenging in the workplace to try to busily do our normal job. So my name is Alyson Pellowe. I'm the owner of People Vision, have been for 15 years. I will let Manjula introduce herself, but before I do that, I'm just going to go through a quick bit of the techie stuff on your screens that you've got. So hopefully you've got an opportunity. You might, depends because you've all probably logged on with different technologies. We have the ability to get you to speak. So Karen, I'm going to unmute as well. The only one things to watch out for is not a doorbell doesn't matter, but yapping dogs and crying babies are quite distracting. So if you've got any of those, put them in a cupboard somewhere. Yeah, so you've got a questions box. I see a couple of you have used the questions already. So has anyone got, if you've got any questions about the content, you can put those on at any time. And I also think there's a chat box, but I'm not sure if everybody's got chat, if any people have only got questions. So far, I can only see questions. So handing over to you, Manjula.
Thank you, Alyson, and good evening, everyone. As Alyson mentioned, I'll do a quick intro and then we'll get started with your career conversation. And my background is business psychology and human resources. So I've done lots of recruitment and selection in my time, both in a corporate organization, but for the last 14 years, I've been a business psychologist, a freelance business psychologist and career coach. And tonight, you've gone through some of the technology aspects, so I'm just going to go through some of the basics. We're going to try and make this as interactive as possible, especially given low numbers. And, you know, that means that we have time for questions in between, and we'll do a few polls. So just to make sure that you know what you can do to interact with me while I'm speaking, you can raise your hand. As some of you have noticed, there's a symbol on your control panel, and you can close the control panel using this orange arrow and press it again, it'll come back up. The arrow points the opposite way. And you also have then this hand, and if it's got the green arrow on it, that means it's raised, and I know that you have a question and I hopefully can get to you. The alternatives are question box, and there's also below that a chat box for some of you. So some ways that you can engage with me directly during this session, because for some of you it might be a new mode of learning. So tonight is really about taking a step before you embark on a bit of a journey, perhaps. And, you know, we spend an awful lot of time in work, in our careers, a large part of our lives, so it's important that we're happy doing what we're doing. And we often get into doing mode before reflecting, so I'm going to suggest 3 stages or steps that we need to take before we start really getting into the practical side, the tactical side of actually applying for roles. And as Leonie, you were talking about, you know, potential careers elsewhere, organizations, all of those things kind of mull around in our heads, but we don't tend to go about it maybe in the most organized way. So hopefully you'll get some tips in this 45-minute session. And first of all, I'd like to get a feel for what your mindset is like, because Alyson, would you mind doing the first poll, which asks people if they've got a fixed mindset or a growth mindset? So a fixed mindset, just to elaborate, is where you think your ability is static, that, you know, you have what you have, nothing's going to really change, whereas a growth mindset is having the mindset that you think you can develop yourself and be better and improve, and as the name implies, grow. So would you like to just pick one of those mindsets so that we get a pulse on our audience tonight? I'll just give you a moment to do that. And Alyson, when you know that everyone's responded, perhaps you can show the results.
It's frightfully clever and told me that 83% have voted.
Okay, so what are the results?
Let's just see. So we can, 100% have voted. Good. So I think I go close.
Okay.
Oh, did that share? There we go.
There
There we go. Oh, aren't we a clever lot?
growth mindset. Excellent. Perfect. So that's good, because otherwise I'd be dealing with a bunch of cynics who think, what's the point? I've got what I've got and I ain't going anywhere fast with it. So thank you. You close the poll down. For some reason my slideshow's gone, so I'm going to just change that back again.
All right.
Great. Okay, so we're off to a good start. So those 3 steps I'm going to suggest we take are, first of all, to take a step back and do a bit of an audit on ourselves in terms of where's my starting point. If we say that's A, where am I headed is B. And you know, I'm suggesting we need to do a bit of an audit before we can start moving towards B. And part of the process then is to research feasible options. So that's the second step. And the third step is connecting with a target. Why, who, and how. So at the end of today's webinar, Alyson will email you a couple of links to some questionnaires that can be quite helpful in this self-audit piece. And the first of those questionnaires that you'll get a link for is called Career Anchors. So you have this wonderful beach that I'm looking forward to seeing in a couple of weeks, maybe in Madeira. But if you think about your career and where you're going to drop your anchor, using that sort of analogy, this guy Edgar Schein brought up these 8 career anchors, and you know, these aren't fixed things. They change with life. And certainly, to share an example, when I met my husband, oops, can everyone hear me? Alyson, can you hear me?
Sorry, I muted everybody, including myself. Sorry, then I didn't unmute you. Sorry, it's like technical hitch. Do continue.
Okay, so anchors, there are 8 of them, as I said, and some of these are listed here. The 4 status is about somebody who, at the heart of their essence, really, you know, seeks to have that status or power. Actually, power is a different one, but someone with technical or functional competence as an anchor would be concerned about being an expert in something. Somebody who has a social relationship anchor would be very much the sociable person at work who knows everybody. Now, security and stability, as I was starting to say, when I met my husband, that was his primary anchor. And so, you know, his career history does show that stability and security, because, you know, pension played a huge part in his choice about which jobs he went for. He restricted himself to a particular sector because he could move his pension along. And so, you know, that was very much his focus. Whereas for myself, autonomy and independence was very high up there. That was my primary anchor. And, you know, hey, what? I'm self-employed, love making my own decisions. I've really not enjoyed the occasions where I've done some maternity leave cover, those kind of things. So, as I said, there's a questionnaire link that is a freebie, and you can complete that and find out what your primary career anchor is. Now, it will give them to you in order of priority for you, and that kind of can help you think about, actually, am I satisfying this desire or motivation or drive in me? But don't think that it stays the same for life, because actually now, as my husband is thinking about retirement, I know that he's actually quite envious of my autonomy and independence, and is thinking about early retirement and doing something that he loves to do, which is property development, that kind of thing. But he doesn't feel right now that he feels that he could sacrifice the security and stability. So that's one measure you can do initially. What's really driving you? What's your career anchor?
I wonder if people in the room could maybe tell us if they've got an instinct about what's driving them for this next year. Maybe, like you say, it is going to change, but maybe just go to the questions box or the chat box and tell us what your instinct is for yourself. We can unmute people as well. I'm gonna wonder if Georgina, don't worry if you don't want to speak, but if you can unmute yourself. Georgina, are you there? Maybe not. Hello?
That's fine.
Hello, Georgina.
I don't know how to.
Hello, hello.
Hello?
Hello, is that Georgina?
Yeah, that's me. Sorry, I didn't know you could hear me.
No, we couldn't. Don't worry, you didn't do anything inappropriate. You're quite safe. We were just wondering, you just wanted to check.
Sorry.
That's okay. Did you have an idea of your primary career anchor as Manjula was just talking it through?
No, unfortunately, I joined a few minutes before because I'm still traveling to my home. That's why. So I guess I will have to wait for the archive for the file that you're gonna send.
No problem, no problem. Well, Julia's very kindly come up, and Julia says she could possibly identify with 3 of them. I've unmuted you, Julia. Would you be able to share with us which ones those are?
Yeah, I thought probably autonomy and independence, being self-employed. I can also see social relationships as well, because I really enjoy hooking up with other trainers and coaches. I'd like to say wealth, but it's probably not PC. I suppose the technical and functional competence, to develop skills in different areas.
Yeah.
I did come across this once before, and I've kind of asked myself a question, 20 years ago, it would have been on security and stability, but I feel that has probably gone out the window a bit, so it's not as important anymore. But I suppose, I could identify with 2 or 3.
Brilliant. Thank you. Back to you, Manjula.
Thank you. And, as you said, Julia, they change. And so it's more of a pulse check right now, what's important for you. And a lot of these kind of questionnaires can help you actually identify what you definitely don't want, rather than maybe pinpointing exactly what does interest you. So, if you can rule out a few, your direction is that much clearer. And similarly, we've heard of strengths, haven't we? And what your strengths are, and they also can change over time. And in terms of using our strengths at work, when we do use our strengths, and by strengths I would define something that you are good at, either as perceived by you and or others, and you also enjoy. So when you are practicing a strength, you feel like you're in flow, and that means that you kind of lose sense of time. You can do it again and again. You just love doing it. And when do you kind of lose yourself doing something? And the happiest people in jobs, does anyone know what kind of job they have, the happiest people, because they're using their strengths? Does anyone want to type in chat? Is anything coming up, Alyson?
Not yet. Not yet.
No?
I'm thinking of people like chefs. I mean, if you watch MasterChef, what people put up with, the conditions, the heat, the aggro, the speed and the quality. You know, those Michelin star chefs. That would be one thing that springs to mind for me. Anyone else got anything else? Please do put it in the questions box. No, nothing coming up at the moment.
Yeah.
Gardeners.
So,
Yeah, gardeners. Yeah.
gardeners, yes. And I mean, isn't it funny how you came up with a role that involves using your hands, something that people are passionate about, and gardeners, chefs, you could say actually generically, it's people who have a craft because they tend to have more control from start to finish and can take pride in that product as being their own.
Right.
And yeah, they tend to be not necessarily the most wealthiest people, although Michelin star chefs are doing pretty well, I think.
Yeah.
But you know, if you think about having your job description and how much of that you actually play to your strengths will very much dictate how happy you are. And of course, if you're happier in your job, you're also more resilient. You're more, as we say, you'll have greater mental toughness to deal with challenges. So those Michelin star chefs, because they love what they're doing, they tolerate some of the challenges and, you know, actually can manage them at quite a stressful level, or at what would be a stressful level for others.
But what would you say to people who might be sitting on the call who would love to reach for that sort of goal of being more in control or playing to our strengths, but it would require such an enormous cut in lifestyle? As an example, let's say you earn whatever you earn and you think, oh, I'd like to just go off now. Maybe you've got a family or you've got responsibilities, mortgage, rent, whatever it is, and you just can't afford to take that leap and just go and be a gardener or a chef or whatever your thing is. So how can you maybe make the best of the world in which you are working currently?
Well, I think actually, you know, a lot of people turn their hobbies into little cottage industries, don't they? Little, you know, selling things, starting selling things over the internet, and you know, the same things apply that I'm going to talk about, like networking, to letting people know what you're great at and getting the word out. Now, simultaneously having a role, a full-time job, and doing that can be tricky, but it depends how much you want to do that and finding a strategy and a way to do that. That might be something actually, I mean, I have a hobby, but and that's tailoring and dressmaking, and I've made wedding dresses, but it's not something that I feasibly thought it's something I'd like to turn into a job. So it does take quite a bit of reflection to say, is this feasible right now, or is this something I put on the back burner, or do I quietly beaver away and have a strategy to swap things over? So another personal example, when I started working for myself, I did purely HR. I didn't enjoy human resources. So I wanted to do business psychology. Bit by bit, every year, I cut away some of the HR to make room for the business psychology. So is there an option of going part-time? You know, you need to explore and start asking people who've made that transition maybe and learn from them.
Well, I mean, I'm just actually reflecting and thinking that tonight is a really good example of the similar thing for me. You know, quite a few people on the call know how much I love to talk. So I'm sure there'll be some tittering in the background there. But, you know, actually a webinar is perfect for this. You know, you can get, I love people. I wouldn't say I love the technology bit of it so much, but I really think, you know, it's very easy. We can be in our own home or we can be in an office quietly somewhere. And this, you know, this is fantastic to get connectivity. Ian's very kindly just said, really? Question mark on the questions box. I know. But, you know, I think you can weave things into your existing job.
Yeah.
You know, and I think you have to think creatively about how you can do that, you know, whether it's through the technology or through the contacts that you have or whatever. But anyway, back to you, Manjula.
And, you know, related to that, actually, people do obsess a little too much about weaknesses. You know, we have appraisals in our workplace, and yeah, you can start thinking about development plans. However, I would warn people that you need to be, yes, aware of your weaknesses and try and minimize them, but you know, don't invest hodloads of effort into making those weaknesses into strengths, because the chances are you're not going to succeed. It takes so much more effort to address a weakness. You're better off capitalizing on those strengths in, you know, and balancing it and tipping the balance towards the strengths rather than addressing the weaknesses. Address the weaknesses so that you're at a competent level, I would suggest, but don't obsess about them.
That's really good.
Because, you know, the theory is that we've got this nature-nurture thing, that 50% of our personality approximately is down to our genes that our mum and dad gave us, and you know, there are certain things about personality that are pretty stable. So, you know, values, attitudes, motivations, your beliefs, certainly an awful lot of beliefs are embedded by about the age of 12. We can change attitudes, we can work on some of these things, but values are pretty embedded. External things can drive our motivations, but there's an awful lot there that as an employer, if the personality of the individual you're recruiting is not a good fit, then you're wasting effort trying to change that piece. But the nurture part, the environment piece, it can be manipulated and molded and shaped to an extent. And you know, that's the other part of us. So ability, skill, knowledge, competence, all of those things can be developed. So be realistic about what you come with, your strengths, your career anchors. Those kind of things are deep-seated personality characteristics that are just not worth trying to change. It's a case of accepting who you are, but knowing there are bits you can work on. So those with a growth mindset can accept that, you know, these personality elements can actually take them places and be positives rather than I'm lumbered with this. It's a case of capitalizing on the real you.
And how do you put that across to your boss? So you're sitting in your appraisal and he or she is sitting there saying to you, you really don't, Alyson, have a good attention to detail or something like that. And you say, you know what, that's just, say, oh, listen, Manjula said to me that I shouldn't really worry about that and that I should, so how do you square that off with your seniors?
So getting them to appreciate what your strengths are, in which case you actually need to know what your strengths are,
okay,
and you know, emphasize those. You should be, you know, Mr. So-and-so, you should be actually focused on what I do really well rather than criticizing the things I'm not great at. And actually, if you're a great manager, then, you know, Gertrude over there is really good on detail. Why don't I take some of what she's not great at and she takes what I'm not great at?
Yeah.
Yeah, so teamwork really should be emphasizing what people's strengths are and what they bring to the table rather than, and you know, trying to address gaps through the different individuals in that team.
Yeah, okay.
So how many people actually could say to a stranger? So there's a question one, Alyson.
Okay, bear with. I might not be that fast. Could you read it out, actually? Have you got it with you? Don't worry if you haven't.
Yeah.
Yeah,
if you
read
think about, could you verbalize your top 3 strengths if someone asked you, a stranger asked you, it's say a networking event, would you be able to tell them what your top 3 strengths are?
So we're just looking for yes, no answers. If you could just all type in for me. So we're getting a couple of answers in.
Mm-hmm.
You could all answer, it'd be great.
Have you got them any to share there, Alyson?
I have, and we don't we said right at the beginning, by the way, if you went on the line, we don't tell people exactly which organisation you're from, but we might say hello to people we know. Hello, Sheena. How are you? Dying to catch up with you. And yeah, we've got people saying no, not straight away. We've got yes, yes, no, not straight away. No, I'd have to think about it. Yes. Some people are very quick at saying the 3 things that they could share. So mostly yes.
Okay, that's good. So, you know, when you're looking to change career, you really need to think about transferability of those strengths and into what context you can capitalize on those strengths, and be in a position to recognize those in you. So sometimes people don't realize their own strengths, and so you need to solicit that feedback, or there's again another questionnaire link we'll send you that looks at your strengths and identifies what your top 5 strengths are, you know, in percentage terms according to a questionnaire, because you know, we're not always experts on our strengths. Others see them and we don't. We might have a blind spot for them. So it's a good idea to, you know, see whether the ones you identify match people's observations of you.
Well, that would require getting feedback, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a bit harsh.
Well,
for those of us who work on our own, that's a bit of a stretch, isn't it, Ian? Sorry, carry on, Manjula.
So yeah, that would be the end of what I would say is your first step in terms of self-audit in your career kickstart.
Okay.
So I'm going to move on to stage 2, which is about researching feasible options. And I mean, most people kind of start their career kickstart by looking at the adverts on monster.com or in the classified, you know, and actually other options are websites and conferences, and there's a whole host of different sources we look in and at to give us inspiration, I suppose, about where we're going to, where our point B is. Now, the interesting thing is, this, you know, January is famous for memberships at the gym and job adverts, people applying for new jobs, and all the recruiters go quiet in December, and January is just nuts. Everyone starts advertising again. But I would like to say that using my analogy of an iceberg, and if you think about how many jobs, of all the total jobs that are out there, are visible to you as a job seeker, what percentage of jobs are actually above this waterline and, you know, seeing the iceberg? Because obviously the iceberg has a much, much bigger root, if you like, than the bit you see on top. So would people like to hazard a percentage guess at how many jobs are actually advertised in some of those notice boards, websites?
Should we say sort of senior jobs? What level of job are you talking about?
The job that you want, generically, I'm really saying, actually,
Okay.
what percentage of jobs are actually visible?
Okay, all right. There we go. Yeah, we're getting our answers in. Okay.
Can I just read some more?
Yeah, absolutely. We're basically going from 10 to 25%.
Okay, that's good. A knowledgeable lot, really.
Oh,
Because it does come in at about, in terms of visible vacancies, around the 20%.
Right.
Yeah, so only 20% of vacancies are actually visible and out there, but that does mean, therefore, that 80% aren't. And employers, you know, really see these as hidden opportunities, and the way they recruit, you know, you might go out and just apply for jobs, those 20% is all you're seeing, and you're having to apply it for a job based on what the employer is asking for, versus employers who are wise and smart think about speculative applications that land on their desks and recommendations from other individuals, and, you know, internal applicants as well are favoured above external applicants. They start there in terms of identifying potential candidates for a vacancy.
Mm-hmm.
And there are much more of those vacancies, as I said, that are hidden and not out there for you and I to see. So if they don't succeed with that route, then they go out there above the waterline and start to advertise, use an agency or a headhunter, because of course that costs. And you know, they're heading from bottom up as an employer in terms of job filling strategies, but your strategy as a job seeker is in the wrong direction, really. I would suggest you need to start getting in front of potential employers before that job is actually advertised. And how do you do that? Well, you do that by using this strategy called information interviews, because Richard Bowles was is quite a well-known name in terms of career shifting, career changing, and as he said, you know, people who actively seek job roles, new roles, spend time talking to people in various businesses and organizations before they go on this application frenzy in January. And so information interviews are the way to get your face in front of employers. And they work because they help you do some of that reflective piece and help you get some of that feedback we were talking about. And they help you in terms of social capital as well, because does anyone understand that term, social capital? Do you want to get some mics open, Alyson?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Who I'm going to open up David White, and I'm going to open up Karen Lloyd, and I'm going to open up Mohan Palmer. We'll start with those three, if that's all right.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll pose your question, and we'll go. Oh, is that Mohan?
What's your understanding of, who understands the term, or what's your understanding of the term social capital?
I thought it meant who you know rather than what you know.
Yes, it is about your allies, I suppose. It's having a tribe of allies, I'd like to say, because they can help you know what you need to know. Yeah? So it's very much using your network, and they can help you become more visible, help you build up a web of contacts that you can bridge, and it gives you access to insider information, which, you know, definitely is going to give you an edge if it comes to an interview. You can impress a potential employer by knowing stuff that wasn't in the job advert, that wasn't in the company profile on the net, and you get a feel for the culture as well, so you know when you're in front of a potential employer whether that fit is right. So the lady talking about AstraZeneca, get out there and get to know somebody who works for them already and start working on people before they even get to Cambridge.
I wonder how comfortable people actually feel. So I've still got Mohan unmuted, and anyone else, let me know if you, on the questions box if you want to be unmuted. Mohan, how comfortable are you to go and approach different people in different organisations? Well, maybe he's going for a cup of tea. Are you there, Mohan? Maybe not. Karen Lloyd, are you there? Karen Lloyd's there, yeah. I'm clicking the thing, Karen. Maybe you need attendees. You need to unmute yourself, Karen. I can't unmute you anymore. Okay, she's trying it. David White, are you there?
Yeah, I'm still with you.
Oh, brilliant.
It's something, it's very easy to tell other people to do it, but inevitably you have a crisis of confidence when it's yourself. You know, there's always the that if you are reaching out, you're being a bit desperate, you're not really interested in them for any other reason than what you might get from the relationship. So, great in principle, bloody awful in practice.
Yeah, it's a case of some of us taking our own medicine, isn't it?
Yeah.
I suggest you can start softly by going onto some LinkedIn groups and getting a conversation going, or contributing to those groups with topics or questions, and being humble and asking for information. And so there are ways you can gently get in, or is there somebody who knows you who can introduce you to somebody who's happy to have a chat?
I'd quite like to invite Georgina. Georgina, can you chat now? Because you've been putting some good stuff up on the questions box. Can I hear you?
Yeah, hello.
Brilliant. So I just wondered, you said you're always getting messages from people approaching and you'd have no problem doing it. And in fact, you said it works. You've done it and it worked just fine. Perhaps can you tell us what industry in which you work, Georgina?
So basically, at that time, I was looking for a job in recruitment.
Right.
And then, so basically, I saw obviously the typical offer from the consultancy. And then I went on LinkedIn and I started just pitching the people that I thought I would be working with because of the interview I had. So basically, it was for South American market. So I started looking at who would be working with me at that time and who would be my boss. So I basically add all of them in LinkedIn.
Brilliant.
And then I did a few questions to some of my maybe future or potential colleagues, like, look, how is it working here? I'm interested. I'm gonna have an interview, but I'm very well at at that time I was working as well, and the office I was with was fine. So I was just thinking, is it the right move or not? So I started asking them. I thought that would give them an idea that I'm actually a good employee, because I'm not looking for another job because I've been dismissed or anything. It's just for a career move.
Yeah.
So, if at any point they would speak with their managers, they would tell, by the way, I'm not sure if you interviewed this person yet, but, that's what I got from her. So it would be kind of a way of the people in the office. It's like as if you already have been there,
Yeah.
because they are already speaking about you before you go. So I thought, that was a good chance.
Fantastic.
That's perfect. I mean, that's a really proactive strategy that you can take, and you've made it pointless me having my slide up. I don't need to read it. Getting started is really start small and get bigger. Start speaking to more people, and quite often we kind of think it's wasted time or it probably won't lead to anything. Well, most of the time it might not, but if you don't try, you'll never reap the benefits.
Yeah, I think it's, once you have already an interview, it's maybe a good point, to upsell yourself, to prepare the people for the interview they are going to have with you. Maybe it's true that before having anything, it might be a bit more difficult to get any results about this. But, I guess maybe it's just to risk a little bit before you go.
I think Georgina is, I think that's absolutely right, Georgina. What I would say is that people may be in different industries. So if you're working in recruitment, Georgina, is that right?
I was in that time. Now I'm working in HR.
Okay, all right. So I would say it would be kind of, I wouldn't say it's expected, but it wouldn't be abnormal for a recruitment or even an HR person. But maybe, and in what sector? Well, the recruitment sector. Which sector is your HR job in?
Now I'm working in totally different thing. So I was doing recruitment for a mining industry in South America. Now I'm working in HR in a media industry.
Oh, funky! Oh, how nice!
So there's nothing to do.
I wouldn't mind if Sheena's there. I'd quite like to see Sheena, because if she can speak. Sheena, can you speak?
Yes, hi.
Hello, how are you, dear?
I'm well, thank you, and you?
Excellent. And I know Sheena's potentially looking at some new opportunities. How do you feel about making those phone calls, very specific phone calls, or going on LinkedIn and taking that strategy?
I think LinkedIn's probably easier to start with, having done this before, because you can kind of, it's easier perhaps to make the introduction in writing rather than having to lift the phone and speak to a stranger.
Mm-hmm.
Agree.
So yeah, LinkedIn I think is probably a good starting point. Obviously my situation is I'm looking to move from one end of the country to the other, so I don't actually have a network in the new location. So again, LinkedIn is probably a good point to start, and then you know, once you get further down the line, you can have those face-to-face or phone conversations.
Back to you, Manjula.
So, you know, we've already touched on the step 3 actually, which is that networking. So information interviews, moving on to more general networking and pushing yourself out of your comfort zone into broader networks potentially. So in a nutshell, networking is about sharing information and services with potentially a common interest, but not always. And it's more about the connecting being the essential part. And we've touched on already how you connect is your choice. So LinkedIn would be a good way to start as a remote method. But, you know, when we're doing it physically, or whichever way, we are on this escalator where we get from knowing somebody and we're developing that relationship to liking them because of repeated conversations, of discovering more common interests, and then actually when we get to a higher level or a deeper level, we get to a trusting point where we're prepared to pass someone on as a good person to talk to because it matters to our own reputation. And that's how you get referrals, and you know that networking really starts to pay off. Now, we've already touched on networking virtually, and what I'd like to do is do a quick poll before we bring things to a close, because I'm sure in our group now, in our audience, we've got people who probably use Facebook or Twitter. So could you just do a quick vote about what your preference is to use Twitter or Facebook in terms of social connection? How are we looking for percentages, Alyson, in terms of voting? Has everyone submitted their preference? Okay, we've got 71% on Facebook and the remainder on Twitter. So thank you, Alyson. If you want to close that down, my slides should come up again. Okay, my slideshow's gone. Okay, there it is. So to get to that prize, you know, if your Facebook or Twitter actually says quite a bit about you and your personality, it seems that, you know, with the majority being Facebook users, you're possibly already quite highly sociable, an extrovert, and if you're a Twitter preferred user, then you know, there seems to be higher interest in acquiring knowledge and understanding. And certainly I get involved obviously in personality assessment, and I could say that I'm a Twitter user. I'm more of the introvert who would prefer not to put an awful lot out there, as Facebook users tend to. And this is some research done recently that says that, you know, you are quite a different personality, and a lot that your choice in networking modality says quite a bit about you. So thinking about making that first move, if you're a Twitter user, you will probably have to stretch yourself a bit to go out there and be proactive and network and connect with people who can potentially then help your career. So we're just about finished, because in terms of those 3 steps, self-audit, researching and connecting, if you're going to make it happen, then you need to have some sort of plan. And I'd like to end with a few questions that you need to ask yourself. So what research do I need to do? Where, how and when? How am I going to do my research? What techniques? and who can help me, and start developing some SMART goals for yourself. So SMART being the acronym about being very specific, having a measurable goal that's achievable and realistic, and has some sort of end date so that you don't keep on dragging it out until never, never, and not taking action. And focusing on what you can influence and impact, because not everything is under our control. So that's the end of our presentation, but in terms of this session today has just been the start. So whether you stay or you go, that's the audit and the 3 stages we covered today, but these are the other stages that I will in coming weeks be covering as well, just to give you a heads up. But to end, any questions?
If you don't have any questions, what I would love to actually hear is what your SMART objective is before we get to the questions bit. So who's thought of something that they would really like to do, given that they've been on the workshop? I know some of you are in the learning and development sphere, so come on, we want an action and a commitment. What are you actually going to do as a result of this workshop? So we'll just pause, and I'll even try and be quiet while you can compose something as the extrovert.
I think that's on a slide, isn't it? There we go.
Ah, there we go, yeah, see.
So we're getting responses of, this is the start of being accountable for your actions.
Yeah. Lovely. So we've got someone saying, I will ask someone, not just someone, it's Michelle, the lovely Michelle, who I know has been trying to get in on the phone, but it obviously hasn't worked for some reason. You're going to ask your colleagues what your strengths are. Yeah, that's fantastic. That's good. Someone says they're going to look in a more regional basis because they specifically want to move to a specific region. So they're going to take that a bit more, so the geography into account more. They've been a bit fluid with that. Ian says he's going to encourage others to approach the unadvertised market when job searching. And I know Ian's a very good outplacement consultant, so that's good. He's taken something away. Oh, that's nice. So David said he's watching this on behalf of his stepson trying to start a career. I want to put the model in front of him now. Okay, that's brilliant. Well, I hope we've absolutely helped him. That's fantastic. Back over to you, Manjula.
Okay, and any specific questions?
No questions. We've also got Karen, who says she's going to follow up on connections made in a local female entrepreneurs network. Fantastic.
Okay.
No questions. So, is there any further questions from anyone? We'll wait 1 minute. Just start. If they come in, I'll tell you. You carry on.
Okay. Well, I think we've reached our time, haven't we? So I need to sign off and just say thank you and let you know that if you want to continue down this road, Alyson will be sending you the links for those 2 questionnaires to find out your career anchors and your strengths. But I would leave you with a parting thought in terms of, only you can change your situation. And that will take some action, some pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. So I wish success in doing that.
Oh, thank you. Well, that's brilliant. Thank you so much, Manjula. And it was a pleasure. Manjula actually attended was on a list for webinars and said to me, I'd like to maybe consider doing one of those, and she'd done them before. So you brought some great expertise to the table tonight. Thank you very much. Really appreciate having you on board. And we've got lots of nice comments saying thank you, and that was brilliant, and whatnot. I'm going to actually press stop recording.